How are you all today? Good? Good. Yeah, it was funny. The moment I left my house, it started raining, but it wasn't raining too hard, so that's good. This weather this week has been very, very strange because I think you know from Friday, suddenly summer came, right? I mean, it got hot. I mean, really hot, in the 30s. And so I thought, wow, this is like suddenly summer's arrived. But then I saw the weather report. It said, oh, it's supposed to get cold again. And then I thought, oh, Wednesday, I thought by Wednesday it'd be very cold, but Wednesday was still quite warm. So the weather's just kind of all over the place. Hopefully all of you are staying healthy. I know that sometimes when we have weather like this, people get sick more often. So anyhow, that's, but it's okay. I think first of all, we need the rain. And second of all, I think it's nice to have a little bit more winter. It's kind of interesting. Okay, so anyhow, there's a lot of big news recently. You've probably been watching the news reports, and you know, of course, a lot of this has to do with Donald Trump. And but this big news recently was TSMC, or Taijidian, Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Corporation, investing $100 billion in the United States. Which is a lot of money. It's funny, when we say billion, you know, we think, oh yeah, billion. You read about billion a lot in the news, but when you really think about it, a billion is a lot of money. And now you're talking about 100 billion. So this is a very, very large amount of money. Most companies around the world cannot invest this kind of money. I mean, this is just an incredible amount of money. I would say, I'm guessing, I haven't done any research on this, but I'm guessing that there's probably less than 5 companies in the world that can just invest $100 billion. I mean, that's just a crazy amount of money. Okay, so anyhow, this is actually not a news article. This is a feature article. It's a longer article on the back of the newspaper that I saw today. And so it's just kind of an overview of this situation and kind of explaining some of these things to perhaps people who are not familiar with it. So it says here, what TSMC's $100 billion investment in the U.S. means for Taiwan. And then it continues, it says, while the chip makers' latest investment might deflect the threats of tariffs, there are fears it could still hurt the economy. Now here we have a word, chip maker. What does chip maker mean? Yeah, make chips, but what kind of chips are we talking about? Yeah, so, you know, we say, I know in Chinese we say 半导体, right? So it's funny, up until about 10 years ago, people used to always say chips. They would say, you know, because what is a chip? It's like a pin, right? It's like and so people would talk about chips and making chips. But I see more often they say semiconductor or something like that. That seems to be the more current word. But yeah, so but we still use the word chip maker when we talk about a company that makes semiconductors. Of course, chip is a shorter word, easier word. So why don't we say it together? Chip maker. Chip maker. Right. And of course, we're not talking about potato chips, you know, or something like that. We're talking about semiconductors. Yeah. Foundry. Yeah. Yeah. So it's very much, there's a couple words that we use a lot. We often say a chip foundry, but there's another word that we use more often. We say fab, okay? So, sorry, this is a little bit unclear. It's UN, okay? So foundry is a very old word, and foundry usually used to be a factory, you know, a 工厂, that made things to do with metal and iron. You know, we would say an iron foundry. They would pour iron or steel, you know, 铁 or tong or anything like that. So it was like this very old, when I think of a foundry from 100 years ago, I think of a very big industrial factory that's pouring steel or iron or something like that. It's a kind of what we say heavy industry or old industry. But today we also use this word to describe a factory, a 工厂, that makes semiconductors. Okay, but so I have seen this word before, although I think this word is becoming much more common. So why don't we say this together? Foundry. Foundry. and then fab. Fab. Now, fab comes from a word, it means to fabricate. Okay? And fabricate means to make, to produce, if you fabricate something, it means basically you're producing it. Okay? It's not, that's F-A-B-R, in case you don't see that very clearly. That's a R-I-C-A-T-E. So if you fabricate something, it just basically means you make it. But for some reason, this word became very, very popular. So now when we talk about, Taijidian, like in Taichung, if you go to the Central Taiwan Science Park, the Zhongke, you will see TSMC fab. They have a couple fabs there. I've talked about Micron, Meiguang out in Holy. They have a fab there. And so we talk about fabs. That's what you always hear this word. They say fab 15, fab 16. They have numbers on them. And often you'll see F. When they say F, usually it means fab. Okay? So fab is just a word, and they've shortened that word to mean a place that makes semiconductors or chips. Okay? So anyhow, those are all words. Sometimes I hear people referring to TSMC as a foundry or a contract foundry, but the actual factory, the actual facility, the plant is a fab usually. Okay? So why don't we say it again? Fab. Fab. Fabricate. Fabricate. Okay. So it says here, while the chip maker's latest investment might deflect the threat of tariffs. Now, what does deflect mean? Well, there's a more specific word to that. If you deflect something, right? Okay, let's say someone throws a ball or throws some object at you, and you shield yourself. You hold up your hands and it bounces off. That's called to deflect something. So basically, it's hitting something and getting pushed back or bouncing off of something. So for example, light can deflect, but remember, it's different from the word reflect. Okay, reflection is like when you look in a mirror, 镜子 or a window, and you see your reflection. Deflect means it's actually hitting and bouncing off. So you can deflect light, right? For example, I was asking my friend the other night. I said, we were walking down the street, and I noticed all the cars down the street were, this is very true in Taiwan, all the cars were white. Every car was white. And I was like, why are so many cars white in Taiwan? Now, of course, she said there are many other reasons, like a white car is easier to resell. But also, I think in a hot climate like Taiwan, white will deflect the sun, right? When the sun comes down, the white color helps deflect the sun, whereas a black color absorbs the sun, right? So I'll give you another example of the word deflect. Often we say, I deflected his criticism, right? So if someone 批评, they criticize me, I can deflect that criticism. Means the criticism will like bounce off of me and go back at them. So maybe I said something to deflect his criticism. Maybe he says, maybe somebody says, I don't think you're working very hard at your job. And I say, well, actually I am, but and you just don't see what I'm doing behind the scenes. And so what I'm saying is my words are deflecting his criticism. They're pushing them back. So does everybody understand that idea? Deflect? No, we wouldn't say that. I think we use another word. I think that word would be something like refract, which is a word that is a little bit complex. Yeah. But this word I just said, reflect, is much more common. Like, sometimes you say, I looked at, every day when you get up in the morning, you might look at your reflection in the mirror, right? I mean, even now when I look at this window, I can see my reflection, okay? The window is reflecting my image, okay? So to reflect, now we can also say to reflect is to mirror, okay? So instead of reflect, we can use this word mirror. I think mirror is like what, 镜子, right? Yeah, 镜子. Okay, so this can also become a 动词. You can say he mirrored his father when he spoke. Okay, you can say he reflected his parents' personality. Okay, so when sometimes, often, I think when we grow up, we are very similar to our parents in some ways. So we might say, I reflected his my father's opinions. Okay, it means I'm very similar to my father in his opinions. Or you can say he mirrored his father's opinions. Same thing. It's that idea. It becomes a 动词. So that's a different kind of word. But deflect is to actually when something bounces off, it deflects. So you're right. With sunshine, like a white car will deflect the sun rays. It'll push them back. Or if somebody throws a ball at you and you use something to deflect it, so it goes off, and use a shield and it deflects the object. Yeah. So ricochet would mean to bounce off of something, but it's a slightly different, it's used in a slightly different way. So we say ricochet. Ricochet could be, like the common word for ricochet is like if you shoot a gun and the bullet, the 炸弹 bounces off of something. It doesn't go in, but it bounces. And you say the bullet ricocheted off of his car. It hit and then bounced. So it's kind of similar to deflect. But deflect is more of a pushing back idea. It's to shield yourself, to make something go back. Whereas ricochet is more of it's more about the object itself. So the bullet ricocheted off the car, right? But you could say the car deflected the bullet. Do you understand what I mean here? The subject is different. So the ricochet refers to the object itself that's going somewhere, whereas to deflect is what is pushing it back. Does that make sense? Does that mean okay? So for example, if I carry a shield, you know what a shield is? If I carry a shield, I might use the shield to deflect things that are being shot at me, right? But those things may ricochet off my shield. Okay, the things ricochet off my shield, but the shield deflects those things. Okay, so I'm sorry if that's a little bit complicated, but they're similar ideas, but one is the subject is different, right? What you're using it for. Okay, so let's say those words together. Deflect. And of course, this can be turned into a mean, so we can say deflection. Okay, and then we have this word, reflect. Reflection. Mirror. And then, this word, refract. Okay, don't worry about this too much because it's a very special word. But this word is more common, ricochet. Okay, now there's no T. Don't pronounce the T. It's pronounced shay, like that, shay. Okay, so it's CHET. It's pronounced. This is a French word, so it's shay. Okay, so ricochet. Okay, and so the idea here is to reflect something is to mirror something. Okay, but deflect is to create a shield so that something bounces off of it, and ricochet is the thing itself. When it bounces, we say it ricocheted off of his shield. Okay. I want to also add that if you reflect has a completely different meaning, right? If you reflect on something, what does that mean? Yeah, you consider it. You think about it. So maybe your friend gives you some advice. They say, you know what? I really think you should change your job. You should reflect on that. Or you can say, I had a long reflection on his advice. It means I thought about it for a long time. So that also, that's a completely different meaning, but it means to think about something, to consider something, to reflect on something, okay? So that's often a word that we use, okay? So these are all interesting, useful words. But it says here, while the chip maker's latest investment might deflect the threat of tariffs. So here we have that idea, right? This is not an object. This is the threat, okay? So you can deflect a threat. So, of course, Taiwan has been threatened by the Trump administration government with tariffs, okay? These taxes. And so by investing $100 billion in the United States, it deflects that threat, meaning that the threat is probably not there. It's gone now, okay? So it says there are fears it could still hurt the economy. Okay, So this is an interesting overview of this idea. Why don't we say this word again too, because it's a word you'll hear a lot, I think. Tariff. Tariffs. Yeah, it's like the word of the year. Yeah, okay. If you don't know that word, you should know that word. Yeah, so, okay. So here it says, Taiwanese chip-making giant, Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Company, or TSMC, plans to invest a whopping $100 billion in the U.S. after U.S. President Donald Trump threatened to slap tariffs on overseas made chips. Okay, so here again we have the word chip, and it says chip making. So now this becomes a 形容词. We have a hyphen here, chip making giant. Of course, it's a huge company. Okay, plans to invest a whopping $100 billion. Now, when we say whopping, what does that mean? Huge, yeah. So whopping it just becomes a 形容词, and just means really big. Okay, a whopping. Now it's when we say whopping, it has it's a little bit more of a casual, word. It's not a very formal sounding word, but yeah, you can say, wow, that's a whopping project. It means huge. Okay, and often we use this word to describe a very large number. Okay, something that's really enormous or really big. I don't know if many of you like to eat at Hanbao Wang, right? Burger King. They have their biggest burger is called the Whopper. Okay. So it's interesting, though, sometimes we use this word in different ways. For example, if you say that was a real Whopper, someone's telling a story, and the story is very 很夸张, it's very exaggerated, and we say he told a real Whopper or Whopper of a story. It means it's a little bit over too much, it's too exaggerated. Okay, but yeah, Whopper, the hamburger Whopper means it's a very big hamburger. Okay, so why don't we say together whopping? Whopping. Okay, and then it says here, after U.S. President Donald Trump threatened, okay, threat, of course, is a 风险, right? But here it's a 动词, to threaten somebody, threaten to slap tariffs on overseas made chips. Now, this is interesting because usually slap means what? If you slap somebody's face, right, you use your hand, usually your hand is open. Now, of course, if your hand is closed, we say what? To punch, right? So it's different. It really depends on your hand, right? So if you punch someone, your hand is usually closed. And what do we call this? A fist. Yeah. F-I-S-T. When you make your hand, you close your hand, and your hand, this is a fist, okay? So if you use your fist to hit somebody, then you punch them. But if your hand is open, then we say to slap, okay? So why don't we say together, slap, slap, punch, punch, fist, fist. Okay, now here though, when we say to slap tariffs on, we use this word in a different way. It means to push or to put something on. It's often like, I'll give you an example. Sometimes when you, this word I think originally when we use it this way, you can say to slap a price on something, okay? Now, I'll tell you why I think they use the word to slap a price on something is because, when you have a store and you have many products, how do you put the price on something? You use a what? Or a sticker, like a 贴纸, right? And you slap that sticker on the product. You take the sticker and you put it on the product. So you slap it on the product. So I think we say to slap on a price on something means to put a price on something. You kind of slap it on there. And so for this, we take that idea with taxes. We slap the tax on something. Just to put it on there with force. Okay, so why don't we say together, slap tariffs on. Yeah, so of course this doesn't mean to slap somebody, but this is to put something on there. And it doesn't really have a positive or negative meaning to it. It just means to put something on there. You can say he slapped the new price on his products, okay? It doesn't really mean it's good or bad or anything like that. It's just a verb, a 动词. Okay, slap tariffs on overseas made chips. So these are not just Taiwanese chips, but any overseas made chips. He threatened to slap tariffs on those. Okay, so any questions about that? Anything? Okay, so let's read this then. Taiwanese chip-making giant, Taiwan Semiconductor, let's say it again, semiconductor manufacturing company, let's say it again, manufacturing company plans to invest a whopping $100 billion in the U.S. after U.S. President Donald Trump threatened to slap tariffs on. Slap tariffs on overseas made chips. Okay. So then it goes on, it says, TSMC is the world's biggest maker of the critical technology that has become the lifeblood of the global economy. Let's read this paragraph too. It says, this week's announcement takes the total amount TSMC has pledged to invest in the U.S. to $165 billion, which the company says is the largest single foreign direct investment in U.S. history. Okay, which is pretty amazing, right? So anyhow, it says here, back to this, it says the biggest maker of the critical, of course, means what? Very important, okay? Not just a little bit important, but if something is critical, it means it's extremely important. You know, and this word gets used in many ways. You can say it is critical that you remember this. Or you could say, you know, sometimes we say in the hospital, someone is in critical care or critical condition. It means they're in very serious condition, okay? They're right on the border of, you know, living and dying. So critical. But of course, this word also can mean if you are very critical of somebody, what does that mean? You're criticizing them, like peeping, Tamen, right? So you can say he is very critical of my work. He likes to criticize my work. So that's a very different idea, very different meaning, okay? If someone is a very critical person, they like to criticize other people. Okay, so why don't we say together, critical. Critical. Okay, so of course it's a critical technology, semiconductors, that has become the lifeblood of the global economy. Now, this is a very interesting word. Life, you know what blood is, right? Of course, we all have blood. Okay, lifeblood, blood gives us life, right? So if something is the lifeblood of the global economy, what does that mean? It means the global economy needs this to live, right? Without semiconductors, the global economy will die, basically, okay? Now, it's interesting because we used to say this about oil, right? You know, 石油, right? We'd say oil is the lifeblood of the global economy. I mean, it still is one of the global but semiconductors are too, right? I mean, it's quite fascinating to see how important semiconductors are now to everything, right? I mean, everything. Many of you have, I think all of you probably have phones. You have laptop computers. You drive cars. Even motorcycles now have semiconductors. I mean, everything has semiconductors. So it is the lifeblood of the global economy. So why don't we say together, lifeblood? Lifeblood. And so maybe you're thinking something. You're thinking, why don't we just say blood? Okay. I think the idea is that this it's trying to express this idea that it gives life. So it's not just saying blood. I mean, if we just say blood, okay, well, it doesn't really have that idea. So we say lifeblood. It means it gives life. It's very important. It's critical. Okay. So yeah, so that's a good way of putting it. And then the second paragraph says this week's announcement takes this investment that TSMC has pledged. Now, of course, pledges, we've talked about this word many times. It's similar to what words? Promise, right? If you promise something, you pledge something, you not so much swear. Swear has a different idea to it. I mean, it's similar, but it's a little bit different. But I think it's closest to I promise I will do this. I pledge I will do this, okay? You could say I swear I will do that, but swear has a more formal, serious, I mean, like I I don't know. It just has a different kind of feeling to it. But when we talk about business investments or contracts and things like that, we pledge, okay? So why don't we say together, pledge. Pledge. Okay, and that can be a 名词 or a 动词. So they pledge to invest in the U.S., which the company says is the largest single foreign direct investment in U.S. history. Often we say foreign direct investment. If you read an article, economic article, they'll say FDI. You know, FDI means foreign direct investment. So someone might say, well, what is Taiwan's FDI this year? How much money has been invested in Taiwan? That means foreign direct investment. So it's a good word to know, good phrase to know. Okay, let's go ahead and read this then. TSMC is the world's biggest maker of the critical technology that has become the lifeblood of the global economy. This week's announcement takes the total amount TSMC has pledged to invest in the U.S. to $165 billion. Okay, which the company says is the largest single foreign direct investment. Let's say this part again. Largest single foreign direct investment. In U.S. history. Okay. I just want to say, you know, if we read something like this, I think it's okay to say $165 billion. Okay. Now, you know, we don't have to say U.S. dollars, because I think if we say dollars, most people understand it's U.S. dollars. Now, of course, if it's dollars from another country, then we could say what kind of dollars they are. But I think if normally in the world, if we say dollars, we assume that it's the U.S. dollar. So again, I would say 165 billion U.S. Oh, sorry, not U.S. 165 billion dollars, just dollars. Okay, yeah. So 165 billion dollars. Okay. Domestic. I don't know. Yeah, it could be. I mean, it could be. That's a incredible amount of money. Okay, so it's it's extremely rare to hear of anybody anywhere. I mean, including domestically, locally, pledging that kind of investment. Okay, you know, somebody might. It's not unusual to hear about a company that maybe is investing $10 billion or maybe $20 billion in something, but to say $165 billion total, or even just $100 billion, that's a lot of money. I mean, incredible amount of money. So yeah, it might be. That's an interesting question. It might be. Oh, he did that. He says the single biggest domestic investment, period. Oh, okay. Well, I know he was very happy. I thought it was very interesting. Did you watch the news? It was very striking to see Donald Trump with I think it was the U.S. Commerce Secretary. I think, I'm not sure. I think it was him. And then the Taiji Dian, what's his name, CC Wei, standing on both sides, you know, of him, and for Donald Trump to be threatening other countries with tariffs and have the Taiwan, you know, at TSMC chairman standing right next to him. I told my friend, I said, well, this makes Taiwan look good, right? Like because they're, you know, now he's threatening other people, but Taiwan's okay right now. So yeah. So it says here, it follows Trump's accusations that Taiwan stole the U.S. chip industry and his threats to impose tariffs of up to 100% and Taipei's promise to invest more in the U.S. Okay, now we've talked about this before, but if you accuse, A-C-C-U-S-E, to accuse means what? When you say somebody did something, it's not so much to complain, it's to actually say somebody did something wrong, okay? So you can say, he accused me of stealing his pencil, okay? I accused him of taking my money, okay? It means I basically tell somebody you did something wrong. Now, that accusation might be correct or it might not be correct, but it's an accusation, okay? Or we accuse somebody. So Trump accused Taiwan of stealing the U.S. chip industry, and of course he threatened to impose. Now, this is a word, we said earlier, slap tariffs, right? This is a word that's similar to the idea to impose tariffs, okay? We impose tariffs, we impose laws, we impose taxes. It means you put this on somebody. You say you need to do this. You impose something. We've talked about this word many times. Impose also means to kind of like to bother someone, right? Like you say, sorry to impose on your time. It means sorry to interrupt or bother you. But here we have, this is a different meaning. Okay, so of course Taipei also promised to invest more in the United States. Okay, now you know. So anyhow, any questions about this? So let's go ahead and read this. It follows Trump's accusations that Taiwan stole the U.S. chip industry. U.S. chip industry. And his threats to impose tariffs. Of up to 100%. And Taipei's promises to invest more in the U.S. Okay, so yeah, you know, I told you this before. I think, again, Trump is a great negotiator. So I think when he says things like, you stole our chip, I don't think he really believes that, to be honest. I think he's using that as a negotiating tool to push Taiwan to invest more in the United States. And you can see this over and over and over and over again in his statements that he makes about things, as he uses this as a negotiation tool, okay? You know what negotiation is, right? So we say, yeah. So did you see the news yesterday that Panama, yeah, the Chinese companies that operate their ports, they said, okay, we're going to sell it to American companies, right? So right there you can see Donald Trump was complaining about China controlling the Panama Canal, and now these Chinese companies are saying, okay, we're going to sell that to American companies. So I think that, you know, again, you see this is a strategy. This is a way that he negotiates by putting something out there and then seeing what they do. And this certainly was the case, I think, here. Yeah. Okay, so let's keep going here. It says, the following is a look at what TSMC's investment could mean for Taiwan. Okay, we don't have to read that. This is saying this is what we're going to look at this. And so here it says silicon shield. Now this is a word we hear a lot today. What is silicon? What does silicon come from? Sand, right? And what do we use silicon for? To make chips, okay? To make any semiconductor, you need that silicon base, okay? So it's very interesting that our most high technology product it uses sand, something that comes from sand, to make this. So why don't we say together, silicon. Silicon. And of course, I think you know a place in America that uses this name. What do we call it? Silicon Valley, right? Which is in California, right near San Francisco. It's very interesting. Whenever I fly back, in the last 2 or 3 years, when I fly back to美国, I fly from Taipei to San Francisco, right? And it's very interesting. I always sit by the window. I like to look out the window. So as the plane is landing, the airplane is preparing to land at San Francisco, you always fly right over Silicon Valley. You can look down and, if you're looking at your, the airplane, they have a flight map, right? You can see all the names of those towns where, you have Apple and Google and all these companies, they're based. And I'm looking out there, I'm saying, oh, that's this and this. I mean, I can't actually see the companies, but that whole area is known as Silicon Valley because that's where all these companies are. Okay, so why don't we say together, Silicon Shield. Silicon Shield. And what is a shield? I just used this word a few minutes ago. It's how do you say that in Chinese? Yeah. So in 100,000 years ago, when people were fighting, you'd hold a sword in one hand and you would have a shield to protect yourself. So a shield here is something that protects you. It doesn't have to be a real shield, made out of wood or something. It could be anything. So, for example, many of us add software, 软体, to our computers to shield our computers against viruses, 病毒, okay? Or we take medicine to shield ourselves against sickness, right? So we can use the word shield as a 动词 or as a 名词, okay? It goes either way. So earlier, I used the word deflect, right? So what does a shield do? A shield will deflect things that are being shot at you, like an arrow or a bullet or something like that. We use the shield to deflect things. So yeah. Mm-hmm. Taiwan, yeah. It means what does it mean? What does this investment mean for Taiwan? It means what impact? It means what impact? What 影响? Okay. So for example, if I say this is I have a new plan I want to do, and then you say, well, what does this plan mean to me or mean for me? It means what impact? What does it do to me? What impact does it have on me? Okay. If I say, well, we're going to change our class and we're going to have a new way of teaching, and you say, oh, what does that mean for us? So mean for us means what does it do? What impact does it have on us? Not support. It's more like 影响. What impact? What does it mean for me? Okay. So yeah, that's a good question. What does it mean for Taiwan? Okay. He wrote a book, I think. There was a book written, actually, it was called, yeah. And it was quite a long time ago, like 10 years ago. Yeah. I remember going to a bookstore and seeing this book, and I think it was actually called Silicon Shield. And at the time, nobody really used this expression. But today we hear this a lot, this idea of a Silicon Shield. So I think you can understand what this means, right? Because what they're saying, yeah, it means that Taiwan's semiconductor industry, or we should say maybe Taiwan's strength or power in the semiconductor industry is like a shield. It's like a protection for Taiwan because it means that Taiwan is so critical to the global economy. I've shared this with you before, but I always say semiconductors are the oil of the 21st century. Today it's oil. It's not, oil is still important, but semiconductors are critical too. And so, if you think of a country like Saudi Arabia, right? So important to the global economy, and in the Middle East and the U.S., the Americans have had a very long relationship with Saudi Arabia to protect Saudi Arabia because of the oil there. And what? Aramco, yeah. What is it called? Arabian, stands with Arabian something. I forget what the M stands for. But yeah, so anyhow, we know how important that is. So I always say, well, you think about Taiwan's share or percentage of the global semiconductor industry is larger than Saudi Arabia's share of the oil industry. Okay, so it's kind of interesting to consider, and so that's what I think they're talking about here. Okay, so let's go on. It says here, U.S. President Donald Trump on Monday. Oh, sorry, that's a photo caption. We don't have to read that. Okay, so let's go on. It says here, semiconductor chips are used in everything from smartphones and televisions to electric vehicles and missiles. More than half of them are made in Taiwan. Okay, so here we're saying how important this is. A smartphone, of course, is what most of you have. It's a smartphone, not a dumb phone. And actually people say that a dumb phone is a phone that doesn't have, you know, the big screen and all those functions. I was reading, I think I told you I was reading 6 months ago that more and more people, including students in America, they're buying dumb phones because they don't want the distractions. The smartphone uses too much of their time. So they just buy a dumb phone to communicate, but they don't want all the distractions and, you know, going online and checking their email and all that stuff. So they just get a dumb phone. Okay, but anyhow, smartphones and televisions to electric vehicles, often we say EVs, okay? And of course, missiles, 飞弹, right? It's a missile weapon, okay? More than half are made in Taiwan, okay? So let's read this. Semiconductor chips are used in everything from smartphones and televisions to electric vehicles and missiles. More than half of them are made in Taiwan. Okay, just in case you don't know, what is a vehicle? It can be any kind of, how do I say? It's basically something that moves, like a form of transportation. So a vehicle, usually I think of a car. It has wheels, you know, 轮胎 and all that. But a vehicle doesn't actually have to have tires. I mean, you could even say like a ship is kind of a vehicle. Basically, it moves and you put things in it. It transports things. It moves things. So it's a vehicle. So yeah, but usually when we say vehicle, we're thinking of a car or a truck or a bus, something like that. So why don't we say together vehicles? Vehicles. Yeah, and then of course missile is, you know, like 飞弹. So why don't we say together missiles? Missiles. Some people, when they say this word, they say missile. I've heard that. And missile is okay too. You can pronounce the I, the second I as a long I, so missile. But a lot of people say missile or missile. Either one is okay. Okay. Yeah, ballistic missile. Okay. So here says the concentration of chip manufacturing has long been seen as a silicon shield protecting the country from an invasion or blockade by China, and an incentive for the U.S. to defend it. Okay, so concentration, if you concentrate something or you have a concentration of something, what does that mean? It means a large gathering of something. So there's a word that when I think of a concentration of something, sometimes we use the word cluster. It's an R. Cluster, okay? So, okay, for example, when you buy putao, right? We buy a cluster of grapes because you have all the putao together, right? They're all together. So we call that a cluster of grapes. But a cluster of cluster bomb, it means many things in one small gathered together, okay? So we often say a concentration of something. It means when you take many things and you push them together so they're all clustered together, okay? So for example, you could say Taichung has a concentration of bicycle companies, right? There's many bicycle companies and they're all clustered in Taichung. So we can concentrate something. It means we kind of put them all in one area. I'll give you an idea. There's a slightly different idea of this is we don't use it quite as much, but you know, you can buy kinds of, when you buy 果汁 juice, sometimes it says concentrate. What they do is they take the juice and they concentrate the juice, and then it's very, very dense, and then you can add water to it, and you don't have to, yeah. A what? CORDIAL. Oh, I'm not quite sure. I know we use it in mixed drinks. What? Yeah. I've heard of it, but I don't know what defines a cordial. Yeah. It might be concentrate. Yeah, I'm not quite sure. I know it's used in cocktails like 调酒, but I don't know what it actually means in terms of, I don't know how to define it. But yeah. So concentration of something means to basically a cluster of something. Now, of course, concentrate has a different meaning. It means to think very hard about something, right? You say, right now I need to concentrate on my work, or I need to concentrate on my job. It means I need to focus, F-O-C-U-S, to focus on something, really just to think very hard on that one thing. So to concentrate means to focus. You're focusing your thinking on something, okay? So that's a different idea, but here it means a group of things together in one fairly small area. So why don't we say it together? Concentration. Concentration. Okay. So, and then as a 动词, we say to concentrate. That's a T-R-A-T-E. To concentrate. Right. So again, this word gets used in many different ways. Let's say you're trying to think really hard and focus on something, and somebody interrupts you. Then we say, he broke my concentration. That's the way we say it, to break. 破坏, to break my concentration. You know, like sometimes I'm trying to I'm concentrating on my work, and I get a phone call. You can say the phone call broke my concentration, okay? Yeah, a concentration camp is something like we know from the 二次大战. You know, the Germans had concentration camps for 犹太人, Jews, and many other people. Yeah, that's a different idea. But yeah. So anyhow, it says the concentration of chip manufacturing, or we could say chip making, has long been seen as a silicon shield protecting the country, protecting Taiwan from an invasion or blockade by China. Now, you know what invasion means, right? Invade, to invade. You know, we're always talking about possible invasion means they actually come into Taiwan. Okay, what is a blockade? Yeah, 封锁, right? If you blockade Taiwan, it means nothing can go in or out. It means to block, basically, to block or blockade. So why don't we say together, invasion. Invasion. And then the 动词 is I-N-V-A-D-E, to invade. To invade. Okay, blockade. Blockade. And that can be a verb or noun, 名词 or 动词. You can blockade something, or there is a blockade by someone. Okay, so invasion or blockade by China, and an incentive for the U.S. to defend it. I think we've learned this word before, but once again, if you give someone an incentive, what does that mean? It's like a motivation. Yeah, it's like a little bit like a reason, a good reason for something. Okay, so when you go to the supermarket and you're looking at different products, what do companies use what incentive do companies give you to buy something? Discount, right? You look at it, it has a yellow tag and it says, you know, there's a special price, right? And you're like, oh, wow, this is great. I'll buy this, you know. That is an incentive. A discount is an incentive to buy something, or a sale is if something is on sale or there is a sale, we say that is an incentive to buy that product, okay? Now, the government also gives us many incentives to do things. I think Taiwan has a wonderful incentive. Remember, 发票, right? What's the incentive to get a 发票? Yeah, they want people to pay taxes, so it's a lottery, right? It's a lottery. It's like or lucky draw, like a raffle, and you can win something. So that is an incentive for companies to give out 发票. Yeah. So anyhow, this is a good word, and we can say this as if we want to turn this word into a verb. Actually the word becomes longer. We say to incentivize. To incentivize. So the word, usually the verb is shorter, but here the verb actually makes the word longer. Incentivize someone. They incentivize the shopper by giving a discount. So it means to give an incentive. Okay? So why don't we say it together? Incentive. Incentive. To incentivize. To incentivize. Right. Okay. So obviously, when these semiconductors are so important, it is an incentive for the U.S. to defend Taiwan. So yeah. Okay, so let's read this together. The concentration of chip manufacturing has long been seen as a silicon shield. So, to say it again, silicon shield. Protecting the country from an invasion or blockade by China, and an incentive for the U.S. to defend it. Okay. Now, of course, when we say has long been seen, it means has been seen for a long time, right? So we could say has long been seen or has been seen for a long time. Okay, so that's the same idea. Okay, so it says here, China has upped military pressure on Taiwan in recent years to press its unfounded claim of sovereignty over the country where TSMC has its headquarters and the bulk of its fabrication plants. Now, here's that word, okay? So here, it's very interesting when you say up. Usually up is a direction, right? You can say he's looking up. But here they take the word up and they turn it into a 动词, into a verb. So you can say he upped something. It means he increased, right? So it's a very interesting way of taking the word up and turning it into a verb. You could say this project, this sale upped my interest in buying that product. Okay, it means it increased my interest in buying that product. Okay, so why don't we say together, upped. Upped. Okay, so China has increased or upped military pressure on Taiwan in recent years to press its unfounded claim. Now, first of all, let's look at this. To press its claim. Okay, when you press a claim, what does that simply mean? Yeah, that's a good word. It means to push. We could say to push your claim or to press your claim, or he mentioned the word to assert. Okay, if you assert something, it means you claim it, right? You say, or we can also say an assertion is a 名词. Okay, so you could say I made an assertion, or I asserted that this project is going to be a failure. Okay, it means I claimed something. I said this. This is what I think. This is my opinion. Okay, so we can press something, a claim. We can push a claim. We can assert a claim. It's all the same. So why don't we start with that word, to assert. To assert. And then as a 名词, assertion. Assertion. And then this word, press. Press. Okay, so for years, recent years, China has pressed its unfounded claim. Now, what is claim? I think you claim something. I claim you did this. I claim that. But unfounded claim means what? Yeah, it means there's no foundation. There's no support. I guess the best way of saying that is unsupported. There's no evidence. Okay? So if I make an unfounded claim against somebody, if I accuse him, there's a word we talked about, accuse somebody, I say, you stole my money, but my accusation is unfounded or it's unsupported, it means I'm not giving any evidence. If someone says, well, how do you know that? And I was like, well, I don't know. I just feel that way, So that's an unfounded claim. Or unsupported claim. Yeah, actually, that's a good way of putting it too. You could say a groundless claim, and it's actually a very similar idea because ground is like the floor, right? And foundation is also like your base, right? So we could say groundless claim, unfounded claim. Yes. Yeah, you could say that, but unsubstantiated is more about evidence. It's more about, I think, evidence or. Yeah, unsubstantiated. Oh, this is a long word. I think I'm spelling unsubstantiated. Substantiated. Yeah. I think I'm spelling that right. So yeah, it means unsubstantiated. I mean, there's no evidence, okay, of something. Okay, so yeah, you could kind of say that, but obviously it's better to say groundless. It's a shorter word. So why don't we say it together? Groundless. This word here, groundless. Groundless. Unfounded. Unfounded. Okay, so it says China has pressured Taiwan in recent years to press its unfounded claim of sovereignty, okay, sovereignty over the country. Now, sovereignty means what? We've talked about this before. It means I have the power, I have the authority over something. So, you know, when we say the sovereign territory of Taiwan, it means the area that Taiwan controls, okay? Sovereign can also be a king as a 名词. We can say that the sovereign of Great Britain or the UK is King Charles. Used to be Queen Elizabeth, but King Charles the what? King Charles the what? 6. Okay, I always forget. Or is it 6? I know it's Queen Elizabeth II. That's easy. Yeah, but yeah. So anyhow, why don't we say together sovereignty? Sovereignty. Right. It says where TSMC has over Taiwan, where TSMC has its headquarters. Okay, it's 总公司, right? And the bulk of its fabrication plants. So again, this word fabrication plant or factory, we shorten it to fab, right? Okay, now when we say the bulk of something, what is the bulk of? What's another word for the bulk of? Majority, most of. Okay, so we could say the majority of something. The okay, the majority of. Okay, so if I say the bulk of Taiwan's people live in North Taiwan or West Taiwan, maybe that's better, West Taiwan. Obviously not, the majority of people don't live in Taipei area, but we could say the West Coast. The bulk of Taiwan's people live in Western Taiwan. Okay, that would be a good way of putting it. Okay, so we could say that. We could say the bulk of. Now, bulk is usually just like a mass, M-A-S-S, it's like a large portion. But here it means the majority of something. Okay, if you are carrying a suitcase or bag and it's very bulky, B-U-L-K-Y as a 形容词, it means it's very big and hard to carry. It's very heavy. You know, it's very large. So we often say, I have a difficult time carrying this bulky suitcase. It's very large and heavy. Yeah. In bulk. Yeah, that's a good way of putting it. So we say if you sell something in bulk, it means you sell it in large quantities, like 好事多, right? And also, like there's a type of ship called a bulk carrier. They just carry large, like they carry, you know, like stones, you know, or gravel, or you know, we say iron ore or something like that. It's a bulk carrier. You just put lots of stuff in there, and it carries it. So yeah, when you buy something in bulk, you say in bulk, it means you buy a large quantity of that stuff. Yeah. Okay. So yeah, bulk is a good word. Why don't we say together bulk? Bulk. And then as a 形容词, bulky. Bulky. Okay. So the bulk of TSMC's fabs or fabrication plants are in Taiwan. Okay. Okay, so let's read this together. China has upped military pressure. One more time. Upped military pressure on Taiwan in recent years to press its unfounded claim of sovereignty over the country. Let's say it again. Sovereignty over the country. Where TSMC has its headquarters. And the bulk of its fabrication plants. Fabrication plants. Right. Now, of course, once again, plant here means factory, 工厂. It doesn't mean like a plant, like, yeah. Okay. Yeah. Yeah, usually we say S with an S. Yeah, even if it's one, yeah. We still say the headquarters. We don't say the headquarter. We say headquarters of TSMC. So it sounds like it's plural, but it's actually singular, okay? And we shorten this word to, often we say HQ, right? Where is the HQ of, we take this word, letter H and Q. So if you see someone say HQ, it means headquarters. So remember, there's always an S there, okay? Why don't we say this one more time? Headquarters. Headquarters. Now, actually, I want to add something. We can turn this word into a verb by adding like ed. You can say TSMC is headquartered in Hsinchu, okay? So we can say TSMC is headquartered with an RED in Hsinchu. So then it becomes like a verb, okay? So why don't we say it together? Headquartered in. Headquartered in. Right, okay. So it says here, that has fueled calls for the firm to move more of its production out of the country to avoid supply disruptions if China did attack. Trump recently warned of import levies of 25% or higher on overseas made chips, which one analyst has said could trigger a recession in the industry. Okay, so there's a lot of interesting words here. We've talked about this before. If you fuel something, what does that mean? Yeah, it means to increase. Yeah. So what is fuel? Fuel is normally what? Fuel is like gas. It's like yo, right? Or actually there's many kinds of fuel. Fuel is anything that provides energy or power, right? So how do you fuel your body? You eat, right? Food is your fuel, right? You need food to have energy to function. So we say food fuels our body. So fuel does not have to be oil. Of course, oil is the most well-known fuel, for our cars and everything else. But anything that creates energy. So we say that has fueled. So here it means that has created, pushed, or created. Yeah, if you fuel something, it means you add power to it. Yeah, it's like saying 加油, right? To add power to something. So this is fueled calls for the firm to move more of its production out of the country. So it means this whole situation has increased calls. People have called for TSMC to move more of its production outside of Taiwan, okay, to avoid supply disruptions. Now we know the word, I think we know the word to disrupt means what? To interrupt. Yeah, it's like to interrupt, okay? If you disrupt something, you kind of interrupt something. So, if during the class here where I'm talking and suddenly one of you jumps up and starts running around the classroom, that would be disrupting to our classroom, to our class, right? Or it would disrupt our study, right? It means to kind of interrupt, to create a distraction. But here it means to disrupt means to disrupt doesn't always mean to stop completely, but it means to create problems or obstacles or, difficulties in something. So here it says the supply disruption. Of course, this is a 名词. The supply of semiconductors, it will disrupt this, if Taiwan was attacked, of course, very seriously. Okay, so let's say it together. To disrupt. To disrupt. Disruptions. Disruptions. Okay. Trump recently warned of import levies. Now here's this word levy. Levy can be a 名词 or 动词. Levy is a word that we use when you impose taxes. We say to levy taxes. L-E-V-Y. L-E-V-Y. To levy is a 动词. But here it becomes a 名词. We say import levies. It basically means like taxes. A levy is like a kind of tax. It could be a tariff, but it doesn't. I don't think it has to be a tariff. It could be income tax, for you that you pay. Okay, but it's not as, we don't use this word as much as other words like tax. Okay, so why don't we say it together? L-E-V-Y. Let's say it. Levy. Levy. And then here's a plural. Levies. Levies. Okay, so he's warned of levies of 25% or higher on overseas made chips, which one analyst, of course, this is someone who studies this, 专家, has said could trigger to cause, right? To trigger is when you pull the trigger, to cause or a recession in the industry. And what's a recession? Yeah. So recession is when the economy starts to go down, right? It's not growing, it's actually shrinking, a recession. Okay. And if you look at most economies, they go up and down. So sometimes they go into recession. But yeah, why don't we say together, recession. Recession. Okay. Okay. So lots of good words here. Let's read this together then. That has fueled calls for the firm to move more of its production out of the country to avoid supply disruptions. If China did attack. Trump recently warned of import levies of 25% or higher on overseas made chips, which one analyst has said could trigger a recession. Recession in the industry. Right. Okay. So it says here, while TSMC's latest investment might deflect the threat of tariffs, there are fears it could hurt Taiwan's economy and weaken its silicon shield. Okay, so let's read on here. Second paragraph together. It says here, the more TSMC produces in the United States, the less important Taiwan will be in geopolitics and the less incentives the U.S. will have to help Taiwan in the future, said Ke Jun, a lawmaker with the opposition Chinese Nationalist Party. Okay, so, okay, here's a good word. Geopolitics. What does that mean? It's a big word. Yeah, so geography, what's geography? 地理, right? And then politics is 政治, right? So we put those two words together, it means geopolitical. It means the relationship between politics and the world, the geography of the world. So, for example, if we say Taiwan is in a very important geopolitical position, it means it's in its position in the political, international political scene is very important. Anyhow, it's a word we use as a 形容词 a lot. We talk about geopolitical or geopolitics. Is there a Chinese word for this? Yeah, okay, there we go. Okay, so why don't we say together, geopolitics. Geopolitics. And then as a 形容词, as a C-A-L, geopolitical. Geopolitical. Right, okay. Okay, so let's read this. Yeah. Of course, sorry, I want to mention here, when we say opposition party, it means the other party, not the party that's in power, okay? Usually it's the party that's not in presidential power. They don't have so yeah, obviously the Kuomintang would be the opposition party right now. Okay, so here, okay, so let's read this. While TSMC's latest investment latest investment might deflect the threat of tariffs. Let's say it again. Deflect the threat of tariffs. There are fears it could hurt Taiwan's economy and weaken its silicon shield. Let's go on here. It says, the more TSMC produces in the United States, the less important Taiwan will be in geopolitics, and the less incentives the United States will have to help Taiwan in the future, said Ke Ju-jun. Yeah, you know how to say it. I don't know how to say it. A lawmaker with the main opposition Chinese Nationalist Party. Okay, let's say it again. Opposition Chinese Nationalist Party. Okay, yeah. Opposition, comes from the word to oppose, right? You oppose something means you're against it. Okay, so yeah. Opposition is a word we use in sports too. KMT, right? Yeah. They don't, yeah. They know the letters KMT. But it's very complicated because whenever I do 跨文化训练, I say Chinese Nationalist Party, but then I say, well, in Chinese we say 国民党, but then I have to say, but that also is KMT, but it's because most people when they think 国民党, they think of maybe G, but it's pronounced, the old writing is KUO, right? So it's KMT, and so it's a little bit 复杂 to explain to people. Hopefully they understand that. Okay, so here it says control of TSMC. Taiwan's leaders are aware of the risks as they try to stay on side with their most important security backer, Washington, and protect the nation's status as a chip-making powerhouse. Okay, so there's some good word here. It says Taiwan's leaders are aware of the risk. What's a risk? 风险, right? A risk, right? Risk. So we can say if something is very risky, like if you make a risky investment in the stock market, okay, or if there's a risk of, today there's a risk of rain, okay, or high risk of rain. It could rain very easily. Okay, so why don't we say together risk, risky. Okay, as they try to stay on side. Now, when we say stay on side, it means to stay on the same side, right? To stay on side. This word gets used in many different ways. Like I know in 足球, there's a rule when you play 足球 that the player has to stay on side when they're attacking, which means I'm not going to explain it. It's too complicated. But anyhow, we say to stay on side means to stay on the same side with their most important security backer. Now, of course, security is like defense, right? Defense backer means supporter. So Taiwan's most important security backer or supporter is Washington, okay, or the United States, and protect the nation's status. We've talked about status, your position, right? Status can mean many things. I know on Facebook, people will list their status. Am I married or single or whatever, divorced? Okay, what's your status, okay? But as a chip-making powerhouse. Now, here's a good word. A powerhouse means what? Not lifeblood. If this country or this company is a powerhouse, it means it is what? Very important. They're very strong in something, okay? So, for example, we could say Microsoft is a software powerhouse, right? They're very important. They're very powerful. What else? Toyota is a automobile powerhouse, right? They're a big company, very important, one of the most powerful companies in automobiles, okay? So when we describe a country or a company as something that's as a leader, they're very strong in something, sometimes we use the word powerhouse, okay? It's an interesting word. So why don't we say together, powerhouse? Powerhouse. Okay, let's read this then. Taiwan's leaders are aware of the risks as they try to stay on side with their most important security backer, Washington, and protect the nation's status as a chip-making powerhouse. Okay. So it says President William Lai's office, President William Lai, I think it should be President William Lai's office with apostrophe S. President William Lai's office said Tuesday the government would review TSMC's deal in accordance with the law and ensure that the most advanced chip-making processes stayed in Taiwan. Okay, so I think this should be a apostrophe S. Okay, President William Lai's office said on Tuesday, I mean, this is okay, we can say, said Tuesday, the government would review TSMC's deal in accordance with the law. Now, of course, this just means according to the law. Often we say in accordance with this, means according to something. So in accordance with the law, and ensure, or to make sure, that the most advanced chip-making processes, of course, when we make something, we have a process to do something, stayed in Taiwan, okay? So let's read this. President William Lai's office said Tuesday the government would review TSMC's deal in accordance with the law and ensure that the most advanced chip making processes stayed in Taiwan. Okay. So basically, if they want to do it, they'll do it. Yeah. Or TSMC. Yeah. So here's a very interesting word, rubber stamp. Now, rubber stamp is often used as a description, like a 形容词, almost like a rubber stamp government or rubber stamp legislature. What it means is that let's say you have a group like the 立法院 or Congress where they have to approve something, right? But if you say they are a rubber stamp Congress or they are a rubber stamp, it just means that they automatically do whatever somebody tells them to do. So let's say, okay, many companies, for example, they have what do they call that? A board of directors, like yeah. So basically, if the board of directors doesn't make their own decisions, they do whatever the chairman says, we say they are a rubber stamp. And you know what a rubber stamp is? It's like it's just like whatever you say, okay, approve. You don't disagree with anything, okay? So we say it's a rubber stamp. Why don't we say it together? Rubber stamp. Rubber stamp. Yeah. So, okay. Okay. It says here TSMC had already pledged to invest more than $65 billion in 3 factories in the U.S. state of Arizona, one of which began production late last year. The $100 billion investment will be used to expand its U.S. footprint further with 3 new fabrication plants, 2 advanced packaging facilities, and a research and development team center. Okay, so there's some interesting words here. It says, okay, TSMC has already promised or pledged to invest more than $65 billion in 3 factories, okay, in Arizona. Okay, one of which, it means one of these 3 factories, one of which began production late last year. So one of these 3 factories began production late last year. The $100 billion investment will use to expand its means TSMC's U.S. footprint. Now, this is a very interesting word. What is a footprint? When you're walking down the road and maybe the road is wet, and what do you leave behind? You leave footprints, right? Or if you're walking in the mud and you go into the house, you might leave footprints on the floor, right? It's the outline of your foot. So here it says to expand the footprint. What does that mean? It means the presence, your presence, okay? So if a company expands its footprint, it means it expands its presence in the United States. Right now, the TSMC has a footprint that is this big, but if we want to expand the footprint, it means we make it bigger. We expand our presence in a place. So often when we talk about a company or a military or a government or something else, we say, if you're going to expand your presence in some place, you're going to expand your footprint in some place. So it's just an expression. So why don't we say together, footprint? Footprint. Okay. It's interesting we use that. But yeah, it says with 3 new fabrication plants or 3 new fabs, we could simply fabs, 2 advanced packaging facilities. Now, when you make a bandao you have to package it. You have to put it together. Yeah, you have to like 包装, right? You have to package it. So we call that a packaging facility, okay, a factory, okay, and research and development. We say, what do we say for short? We say R&D, right? R&D, okay, research and development team center, okay. So this is 3 different kinds of plants or facilities in the United States, okay? Okay, so let's read this together. TSMC had already pledged to invest more than $65 billion in 3 factories in the U.S. state of Arizona. Arizona. One of which began production late last year. The $100 billion investment will be used to expand its U.S. footprint further. Let's say it again. U.S. footprint further. With 3 new fabrication plants. Fabrication plants. 2 advanced packaging facilities. Packaging facilities. And a research and development team center. Right. Okay. So here he says, let's just read 1 or 2 more paragraphs and then we'll do a different story. It says, Richard Hu, Deputy Director of Taiwan Center for Security Studies think tank, said Trump wanted to prevent TSMC from falling into China's hands and to make it a technological asset of the United States. Okay, so what is a think tank? Yeah, it's really cool. Like we have many think tanks, right? It's a funny way of saying that, but think of a tank, many people thinking. So think tank. Okay, why don't we say together, think tank. Think tank. Okay, so it says Trump wanted to prevent TSMC from falling into China's hands and to make TSMC a technological asset. What is asset? A-S-S-E-T. It's something that belongs, it's like something that, a strength, so what kinds of assets do we all have? We have maybe a house, maybe we have a car, maybe we have money in the bank, right? Those are all assets. But we can have other assets too. Like you could say, what are his physical assets? Like you might say, well, he's very strong, or he's very fast runner, or he's very intelligent. Those are also assets that we have, right? So why don't we say together, asset. Asset. Okay, so this would be a technological asset, okay, not a physical asset or natural resource, or yeah. Okay, so let's read this together. Richard Hu, Deputy Director of the Taiwan Center for Security Studies, think tank, said Trump wanted to prevent TSMC from falling into China's hands and to make it a technological, let's say it again, technological asset of the United States. Okay. Okay. Let's just read this and then we'll be done. It says here, Trump's ultimate goal is to ensure that the U.S. can fully or critically control TSMC's semiconductor production, making it a de facto part of America's chip industry, Hu said. Okay, ultimate means what? Final or the biggest, like the ultimate. Okay, we would say, what's your ultimate goal in life? Someone might say, well, to have make lots of money, or to have a great family, or so ultimate means the highest, okay? Why don't we say together, ultimate. Ultimate. Okay, ensure that U.S. can fully or critically control TSMC's semiconductor production, making it a de facto part. Okay, this is a word we hear a lot. What does de facto mean? It means in fact, it means in actual, in reality, yeah. So for example, we often say Taiwan is a de facto independent country, right? Because, China might say, oh, it's part of China, but we know that Taiwan is an independent, it functions as a real country, right? So we say de facto, even though by law, maybe by the United Nations, they don't say Taiwan is a country. We say in reality, in fact, okay, it is an independent country. So we say de facto, okay? It means maybe not by law, not according to the law, but in reality, in fact, okay? So it's a Latin word, okay? Yeah. So, yeah, de jure means according to law, right? Yeah. Yeah, I wonder. Yeah, I agree. It's the big question everybody asks, right? Is so that Taiwan should be de jure, like according to law, it should be well, and of course by its own law it is, but according to the United Nations, or yeah, right, exactly. Yeah. I mean, yeah, it's just one of those. To be honest, I tell my foreign friends, it's just one of those stupid things that Taiwan has to live with, right? Because if you look at Taiwan by any standard, any global standard, what defines a country? What defines an independent nation? Taiwan, we say it checks all the boxes, right? If you have a list, Taiwan checks every box, right? Every box. Does it have its own territory? Yeah. Does it have its own government? Yeah. Does it have its own elected leader? Yep. Does it have its own military? Yeah. Does it have its own, all those things it has. So it is an independent country by law, right? But by only there's 12 countries, but yeah, it's a country. So we say de facto here, of course, when we're not talking about Taiwan, we're talking about making it a de facto part of America's chip industry. Yeah. D-E and then J-U-R-E. Again, this is a Latin phrase. Sorry, that's D-E, de jure. Yeah. Yeah, so anyhow, this is more like government or business or court language, okay? Sorry. Okay, so let's read this. Trump's ultimate goal is to ensure that the U.S. can fully or critically control TSMC's semiconductor production, making it a de facto part. Okay, say again, de facto part of America's chip industry. Who said? Okay, so actually, let me just read this because I think it's interesting. There's different 角度, there's different perspectives. So this is someone else. He says, Taipei security analyst Su Ziyun was more optimistic, saying TSMC's investment would make Taiwan safer and help grow the chip industry. Okay, and then the second paragraph, it says, it would also help build trust between Taipei and Washington and ease Trump's concerns about U.S. economic security, said Su from the Institute of National Defense and Security Research. Okay, so here we have another guy who says that he's more optimistic. What does optimistic mean? When we say optimist, if you are an optimist, what does that mean? Yeah. So what's the opposite of optimistic? Okay. Sorry, that's a C. Okay. So an optimist is someone who is optimistic. It means you look on the good side of things, right? But a pessimist or someone who is pessimistic looks on the negative side of things, right? Have you ever heard the expression, you say, is the glass half empty or is the glass half full? Have you heard that expression before? Okay. You know, if you have a glass of water and there's the water is up to halfway, you can look at the glass and you can say, oh, it's half full. So that is being what? Optimistic, right? Or you can look at the glass and you say, oh, it's half empty. Then that is being what? Pessimistic, right? So we can say, that's actually an English expression. You can say, is the glass half empty or half full, right? Which one is it? So anyhow, this guy is more optimistic, okay? He's being more optimistic. Yeah, he is an optimist. So why don't we say it together? Optimistic. Optimistic. Optimist. Optimist. Actually, I want to add is that if you want to use this as almost like a 主义, we say optimism, okay? So why don't we say optimism? Optimism. Pessimist. Pessimistic. Yeah. And then pessimism. Okay. So you can say, I have optimism about the future. I have optimism. Or you could say, I am optimistic about the future. Or you could say, I am an optimist. Okay. So these words can get used in like at least 3 different ways. I am something, I have optimism, or I am optimistic. Okay, so these words get used, and of course we can do the same thing with pessimism, pessimistic, or pessimist as a person. Okay, so this is a very, very useful word. Okay, so he's much more optimistic. He's saying it will be safer, it will help grow trust between Taipei and Washington, and ease. What does to ease mean? To relax, okay? To relax Trump's concern. So often we say to ease someone's concern, or we can ease someone's worry, right? You could say, I explained the situation to him to ease his concerns or to ease his worries. It means to reduce or relax somebody's worries or concerns about U.S. economic security. Okay, so this is his optimistic way of thinking about it. Actually, we don't really have time to look at a second article, so let's just read this together. It says, Taipei security analyst Su Ziyun was more optimistic, saying that TSMC's investment would make Taiwan safer and help grow the chip industry. It would also build trust between Taipei and Washington, and ease Trump's concerns about U.S. economic security. Let's say it again. Economic security, said Su, from the Institute for National Defense and Security Research. Okay. Okay, maybe one more paragraph. Oh, let's see here. Oh, two more paragraphs. Let's read these two together. I think the importance of Taiwan is not only TSMC, but also the geostrategy, Su said, noting the importance of global shipping lanes near Taiwan. However, James Yifan Chen of actually it's Danjiang, okay, it's spelled weird, University said higher manufacturing costs in the U.S. would drive up prices of products using TSMC chips. Okay, so remember we talked about the word geopolitics, right? Here we have a different word. It's geostrategy, okay? What is strategy? Yeah. Like when you're making big plans, right? That's your strategy. Like we can say, what's your strategy for winning this competition? What plan or what idea do you have? So here it's a geostrategy, okay? So he says the importance of Taiwan is not only TSMC, but also geostrategy. I think he's talking about Taiwan's position or its geographical position. Noting the importance of global shipping lanes. What is a global shipping lane or shipping lane? It's a xian for what? For ships, right? So you know many ships every day come through the Taiwan Strait, right? Taiwan Haixia. So Taiwan is right in the middle of that, near Taiwan. However, this guy says, and this is funny. This is a very old spelling that we still use today for 淡水. They spell it with an M, which is very confusing to people. But 淡水is spelled Tamsui. So it's a very old Taiwanese. So they say Danjiang. Okay, Danjiang. Yeah, I'm sure Americans are saying Tam King. You know, who knows? Okay. Said higher manufacturing costs would drive up prices using TSMC chips. Okay, so it would push up the price. Okay, so let's read this and then we're done. I think the importance of Taiwan is not only TSMC, but also the geostrategy. Let's say it again, geostrategy. Su said, noting the importance of global shipping lanes near Taiwan. However, James Yifan Chen of Danjiang University said higher manufacturing costs let's say again, manufacturing costs in the U.S. would drive up prices of products using TSMC chips. Right, okay. So I just have to say that I agree more with this guy because I do think that this is, if I were the United States, I mean, obviously we know Donald Trump says America first, right? And you have some resource that's that important to your economy. You do want more of it produced in the United States. But I was reading just last night that even if they invest over $100 billion in the U.S., the percentage of semiconductors made in the U.S. is still like less than 10%. Okay, it's still mostly made here. Yeah. Mm-hmm. 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 Oh, really? Oh, okay. I didn't know that. Okay. So I'm sure he has his own perspectives. Yeah. But I do think I agree that I do believe this ties Taiwan and the US closer together, this arrangement of making more semiconductors in the United States. And again, this is pretty amazing. It's pretty amazing that Taiwan, you know, this Xiaodao, right, is investing that much money in the United States. I mean, that shows, I think it's something that Taiwanese should be proud of, is that we have a company that's able to be the biggest ever investor in the United States. That's pretty incredible. So anyhow, so I would say don't worry about it too much. So, okay, thank you.
唯一有听到吗？哦，好，各位读者，今天3月是那个Women History Month 的，好，所以我们呢利用这个机会。